Thank you, everybody. It's really nice to be here. I don't know if I'm going to have any approaches to managing unicorns other than a really long leash, but I will definitely try to share some of our experiences in thinking about talent in the startup ecosystem and how that might apply to business talent in media. So first, let me just say a word about who we are. So I run a new venture fund called Bloomberg Beta. We invest on behalf of Bloomberg LP, the technology, finance, media company, and we're an unusual venture fund in a couple of ways. One, we're unusual for a corporate venture fund in that we do not invest with any view to who wants to work with Bloomberg. Our view is if you want to find a unicorn, you probably can't latch them on to a super tanker too early in their life. And second, as a VC, we're somewhat different from other VCs. We're a new VC and an attacker in our industry, which means we have to try some new things. Before I did this, I was the founder of a company, co-founder of a company that made a game console, an open source game console that was Kickstarter funded, and I ran a subsidiary of News Corp, IGN Entertainment, online ad business for 5 years. And I saw a few things in the venture world that I thought, wow, maybe if someday I'm on the other side of this fence, I might do things a little bit differently. And this fund is trying a couple of those things. So speaking of the communities where some of this talent hangs out, GitHub is, in some ways the first port of call for software engineers. And when we started writing how our fund worked, we decided that we were not only going to share it publicly, we were going to be transparent in the way that startups often are, but we were going to open source it on GitHub. So if you go to our website today, it'll redirect you to our manual on GitHub. We thought that we would crib from how startups themselves operate. And one way startups operate is they're very, very attuned to early data. Now, it's really hard in the venture business to pay attention to data because it takes 10 years to figure out sometimes if the investments you make work. I think I see Stuart here, who you wrote about your company that you invested in, and what was it, a 14-year journey? Well, 14 years, something like that, in Visto. And to me, that was amazing. I mean, VC is kind of like playing baseball, where you get to swing 30 times, and there's only one metric that matters. It's not your batting average. It's not your slugging percentage. It is the distance of your longest home run. And the balls take 10 to 14 years before you figure out where they land. So you're sort of looking there. So we're thinking, what data can we use? And we try to predict who would start a company in the future by looking at a wide variety of now publicly available data sources and try to meet these people before it's obvious that they've grown that horn in the middle of their horse's head. And so our focus is investing in companies that make work better. And as a result, we obsess a lot over what talent looks like. And so startups make some pretty audacious claims. Startups claim that they have a different model for how talent is formed from the traditional model. This is an old model, a model that probably didn't apply to any of us. Your career. Single job, you stay at a place for a very long time. Maybe some people are fortunate enough to have found a place they love, and their career looks like that. A more modern model, I'll call this the LinkedIn model, looks like a linear succession of jobs. First, you have a job for a little while, you grow, you have another job, you have a third job, they all kind of go in a row. Maybe you're unemployed for some brief stretch, and you try to explain your gap. But it looks linear nonetheless, different kind of linear progresses in some way. The careers of many of the people that I know who are in the startup world look more like this. Maybe they'll have a job, maybe they'll have another job, unemployed unhappily, that's the frown face unemployed, and then it's a mess. They maybe start a job while they have a side project of being on a board, they hack on something which seems to be emerging. Maybe then they're unemployed happily by choice for a period of time. They make an investment. One of those maybe turns into a job. And we lack the vocabulary as an industry. So in the business of media, we lack that vocabulary. In the business of startups, we're really just developing that vocabulary. And there are some things that come close. So if you look at some of the fastest growing startups that are accessing new pools of talent, they think of their talent as working for them on gigs, the so-called gig economy. So that's the on-demand driver, the on-demand delivery person. We invest in a company that is on-demand freelance software developers to help you make your machine learning enabled website. You can just try Gigster for that. But in the gig economy, what's different? The work is based on projects. So not only do you think of a stint as it's not even a tour of duty at a company. It's this kind of ambiguous affiliation that takes a brief moment in time when you crystallize it, and then you move on. Second, reputation matters a lot more. As much as we'd like to say and think, and it's true, that your reputation mattered over the course of your career, it mattered in a pretty limited way. Maybe if somebody wanted to hire you, there were 2 or 3 people they could call at your company who knew you well. Maybe you had business partners, but you certainly weren't being judged for it directly on a regular and daily basis. Third thing, the rewards can, not always, but can vary dramatically by project. The best freelance software engineer is earning a dramatically different rate from an average or below average freelance software engineer. And so I thought to myself, this looks like a new kind of a pattern. How can we understand how it works? And I always look for examples because my fundamental hypothesis is, most of the things that are new are just reinvented versions of old things. And if you think about the media industry, it started out where the career model was a single job. You had the studio system, Bing Crosby employed for many, many years. And then you have something that looks a little bit more like project-based work. So, the guy who's going to direct the next Star Wars has done TV, done movies, has his own shingle where things get formalized, gets hired occasionally for something. PewDiePie looks like a radical extension of this. And so what I realized is if you look at what startups believe is the kernel of how they are reinventing the way talent works, the way that team that built a thing as a side project that ultimately became GitHub. Uber, whose first version was created by a team of freelance software engineers, there's a case to be made that the original gig economy is actually in the entertainment business. And so if we look at that and see what's happened, how might we think about what might happen in business talent in the media industry more generally, maybe in the startup industry too? So one thing is that other businesses will pop up just to serve that talent. So YouTube is a platform that serves that talent in a certain sense. I've seen 1,001 different services for freelancers to track their taxes or figure out how much work they did on a given project. Second is the talent might organize much more directly. So in Hollywood, we saw that with the formation of unions. And in the modern era, we might see it with something that looks like a lighter version of the same thing. There's another investor at Union Square Ventures who calls this Union 2.0. My partner, James Cham, describes it as Union as an app, which is the idea that that group might get some collective power by working together, using some common software tools to reduce their costs, to get insurance, maybe to figure out pricing and share information about each other, share information about employers. The idea of something like Glassdoor, where an employee could go and see the reputation of their company, was anathema not too long ago. Third, the rewards to stars will probably multiply even more. And this is the place where my guess is the more established your company is, the less likely it is that this is true. And the single biggest liability in the business of media is that it is very hard in a complex, established business where everybody is trying to optimize what their talent does to figure out who is the star. Because in a way, the system is the star, the company is the star. But talent looks at it and says, wait a minute, without taking too much more risk, certainly without taking much career risk. My startup fails, nobody's going to think, this guy's washed out. They'll be just as happy, if not happier, to hire me at a big company. They'll think, without taking too much more risk, I might have not 50% more, not 100% more, but 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more. And I'm not just talking about money, because this is also true for just a feeling of ownership, that the rewards to the stars are magnified in terms of their feeling of authorship for what they create, their sense of freedom, their ability to build something without having to call somebody in accounting to get a server, extra rack of servers provision. So what does this mean for all of us? I think it means that if we want to think about how to succeed with business talent, and business talent at media companies new and old, we should probably look at these models from startups and try to figure out how to enable them, which probably means that we actually want to copy the way that the creative side of the media industry has worked for a long time. The entertainment content, and to a lesser extent, but still some extent, the journalistic content that fuels many of the media businesses whose ads we sell, whose executives and marketing distribution plans we read, whose partnerships we accept, might be this pattern. I don't think that anybody has figured it out very well yet. I think the startups that will serve it are just being born now. We hope to invest in some of them. We invest at the very earliest stages, and so we're looking at maps that look even messier than the one that Carrie just put up a minute ago. And if you know anybody we should invest in, we'd love to see. And otherwise, if you want to figure this out, we'd love to speak with you. Thank you.